Good evening. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. Benji Porter, a good evening to you.
Hi, Howie.
You know, have you been wandering around your house on your hands and knees looking for chomets?
Not quite yet. In fact, I know Hirsch and I at separate times today had that incredible privilege of going to the Chevra drive-through, which was just remarkable, Howie.
That's not a shooting like they have a drive-through in America.
No, it's no.
Howie, that's a drive-by.
A drive.
Yeah.
Howie, you're showing your inept like kind of experience around gangs, hey?
Yeah, no, it's my rapper persona on tonight.
That's amazing.
So how was your drive-through, drive-by, drive-in?
You know, Howie, what inspired, it was unbelievable, and they had different things, and it was this immersive experience, like Pesach experience. Had people walking with like bags over their shoulder, like they were slaves, and there were camels, and then there were different plagues, and you drove through your car through these different experiences, and at the end you flew off Lashana Haba, you know, you flew off to Israel, and it was an incredible experience. And what kind of inspired me so much, and I was chatting to Amanda about it, is this ability to reimagine. I don't know if you remember that commencement speech by J.K. Rowling at Harvard, where she said where she learned her imagination, the power of imagination, was working at Amnesty International, and where she saw people absolutely devastated, their lives devastated, and they reimagined a new world, these people. And I advise anyone to listen to it. It's a commencement speech at Harvard. And I get that same feeling from some of the organizations, that they've just reimagined a new world. And it's the most inspiring thing to see.
So, I mean, that's one of the things we're actually going to be talking about tonight.
Exactly.
We've reimagined community and what we understand by being part of community. So, Herschel, you were driving through, you weren't crawling around on your hands and knees with your Hanukkah candle and a feather looking for chomets, but have you sold your chomets yet, and did you get a good deal?
I sold my chomets on a non-exclusive mandate basis. So less than what I would have liked, but I'm satisfied with the price.
Is there a call option to
get through the deeds office, Hirsch, like the other deals?
It will take 6 months for Herschel to get his chomets through the deeds office.
Yeah, there's a private sale. I mean, I hate to say it as an estate agent, but it was a private deal.
No commission.
No commission. Peter Crossmorder, welcome. Lovely to see you this evening.
Hello.
I was discussing you last night because our classmate Didi Myman was in Johannesburg for the evening on her way back from Swaziland, where she's been working with, or Swaziland called Eswatini, where she's been working with Israel, who are very much helping the Swazi government roll out vaccines throughout Swaziland. So the entire team were in Johannesburg for the night, flying back to Israel. They'll be back in South Africa in a few weeks' time. But it was wonderful to see them all, and wonderful to see that some of the neighboring countries are making so much progress with vaccines and with Israeli aid.
I'm sorry I didn't get to meet her or interview her, because she's done amazing things in Israel.
So she works with refugees in Israel. Which is amazing, but you have covered that story of Israel in Eswatini in the latest edition of the Jewish Report.
Yes, absolutely. I didn't know she was involved. What a pity.
She's involved, but the one thing I didn't see in this week's edition were Pesach recipes.
Well, we ran out of space, unfortunately. So this week we're going to have 2 pages of Pesach recipes, just in time for Pesach.
I feel much better already.
Yeah.
Howie, I want to This morning on our ride, I was riding with Benji and a couple of other guys, and we were just saying about Swaziland. Maybe it's time to book a 3-week trip to the Royal Swazi Spa.
I think it may very well be needed, Hirsch. You look like you need a little Botox putting in, and maybe while they're there, let them do a jab here, do a jab there.
Exactly.
Howie, that's a different webinar, buddy. It's a different webinar. Male grooming.
Male grooming, but I want to know, Danny Kedar, grain is very important in your life. Have you been making your grain yet this weekend?
So Howard, I've outsourced it to a doyen in my complex. He's 72 years old, and he is a qualified specialist on how to make what I call Jewish moonshine, which is the world's most potent grain. So I have purchased the roots, and he has now given me the batch today. And I took a good whiff of it. And besides for almost bursting the blood vessels in my eyes, it's the good stuff. It's the good stuff. So I'm very excited.
Well, I think maybe, Peter, we should
actually
actually have a
talking
grain.
about grain. I'm just.
I was wondering, same thing.
Peter, maybe we should have a grain tasting competition in the Jewish Report, because I went to smell my father's grain, and you know that little emoji that you see, which is like that on top? That's my sinuses immediately cleared up. There was like a nuclear explosion happening in my head. So maybe we should actually have a competition for who makes the strongest and best grain in Johannesburg. I know Dina Diamond's father will be in. My father's in. You talking about Danny, your next door 72-year-old next door neighbor. If you do make your own grain and you'd like to be part of this competition, please just post us a message in the chat section on Facebook, on Zoom, on YouTube. Let us know if you want to be in the competition for the strongest, best grain in all of South Africa.
Are you and Danny going to be the people testing it?
I think we may have vested interest. So Hirsch and Benji, are you independent testers here?
Yeah.
Hirsch is definitely independent. I've got.
Yeah. I remember it was this time a couple of years ago. I think Prince passed away just round about this time, because I remember your post on Facebook, purple grain. I was like, seeing purple grain.
So we have quite history. This is bizarrely, can you believe it? We're back at the Pesach webinar again. I mean, this is almost where we began just over a year ago. I think it was our 3rd or 4th webinar, and it was Pesach, and we didn't know what to do. And we wanted to give people a sense of community and a sense of the Seder, because so many people were going to be a part. And it was an amazing experience, Benj, because in the middle of all of this, people started messaging, I can't get Pesach dik food, I can't get matzah. And you had the idea, well, let us know and we'll get it to you. And all over the world, in South Africa, in London, in Johannesburg, and Durban, and Cape Town, and all over, you were arranging the delivery of kosher and Pesach dik food to people.
That was incredible.
Firstly, it was a very big team effort, Howie. And if anyone had the idea, the board and this magnificent team that's around the Jewish Report, we're all so committed. And I think we were just learning as we go along what was going on. And we saw one of these posts, one of the comments on the chat that said, how do I get matzah? And we couldn't believe it. And I know we were WhatsApping each other. And so certainly for me to take the credit is inappropriate. But as a team, we understood there was this need, a short-term need. And so we had friends. I know you had friends step in from overseas. I know Hirsch helped, and we had friends from all over, and our entire team, and we had friends from London who helped deliver matzahs, and it was a great experience. It was a great communal, unifying experience.
So what has changed in the year? Hirsch, what does your Pesach Seder look like this year in comparison to all other years?
I remember thinking this time last year, it was myself and Paula, my wife, and my 4-year-old son, Leo, and we prepared this whole beautiful Seder. His concentration span lasted 2 minutes. So we're hoping to get a 3rd or a 4th minute. But actually this Seder, we're going to have my parents with us. And that's been few and far between over the last 12 months. So we'll have 3 generations of Jarvitzes, and for my son to be with his grandparents, with his guy over Pesach, I think will be very special for us, and I think even more special for them. So we're looking forward to the Seder this year.
You know, before we ask the other people how their Seder this year is going to be different from other years, I want to tell you we've got Nick Rabinovitz, who's done a section for us on the 10 plagues coming up. And he tells me he had written a line that his wife wouldn't allow him to use. And that was, if there was 1 more week of school Zoom, he would be all in support of the killing of the firstborn.
That's terrible. That is awful.
Benji, how's your Seder looking like this year? Is it just the immediate bubble?
No, so my in-laws are coming, and we've got this like, I don't know, whatever you want to call this perfect kind of story, which is going to assist us.
Which you use with your in-laws, even not during Pesach time. Eh?
Yeah, like that's a separate story. That's just a separate webinar. No, we're desperate to have time, and I know we've been chatting a lot about it. It's this balancing between kind of the mental wellness, the physical wellness, all of those things. And so just like I said earlier, reimagining a different type of Seder, but with my in-laws, unfortunately, I think my parents, it's a bit trickier. I'll miss them terribly, but we'll try and make a plan around that. But the difference this year is we are having my in-laws in a very safe way. I won't bore everyone on how we're trying to do it, but that for sure we're going to try to.
Danny, on your side, how big's your Seder this year?
Yeah, I mean, this year we're also having my in-laws over, and I'm actually quite really grateful over that. I mean, last year was my wife and I, which was really beautiful, but having Donna's parents over, it's just amazing how COVID has really made us dig deep and appreciate family time and how valuable it is just having family over, and how special like a Pesach Yom Tov meal is, just with immediate family, and how not to take it for granted. So I'm super excited actually about that.
Well, I'm super excited because in non-COVID years, my Seders are usually 40 people, and they're huge amounts of work because we do readings from freedom around the world, and we have Where in the Waldo pictures to try to find the Matzah in, and we vote on 10 plagues. And it's so much work. I'm actually quite grateful to have a much smaller Pesach Seder this year, because who's got time for that, even during Corona? So, Peter, what does your Seder look like?
So in the past, Howie, I come from a very big family, the Crossed family, and so Pesach Seders are usually large. Last year, it was just me and my immediate family, and this year, I'm going to one sister for one night, or we're going to one sister for one night and another sister for the other. And it'll be a small group, but at least there'll be family. I'm very grateful for that.
And others, are people using Zoom screens or not? I know the Shomer Shabbos people are definitely not using Zoom screens. They're not even putting on Zoom before Yom Tov begins. But I must tell you, I'll still be using a Zoom screen. And it's going to be really important to connect to people both in South Africa, my nieces in Israel, my cousin in Bahrain. We'll do something international, almost like we're doing tonight, by joining all the Jewish people around the world in a celebration of our freedom. And so we've got 2 minutes before we begin. We want to welcome everyone this evening, and we'd love you in the chat section. Number one, just to tell us how you're going to be celebrating your Seder this year. And number two, why don't you send a greeting to the entire Jewish community? So whether you're watching on Facebook or Zoom or YouTube, take a moment now before we begin and just type a message to the South African Jewish community with Human Rights Day. And that's a significant day in South African history. Peter, you come out from an activist background as well. Do you sit down with your kids on a day like today and talk about human rights?
So today I didn't, but we talk about human rights often and about racism and things like that. I must say, as my children are getting older, they have more and more interesting views. and debates get really interesting. Yeah, so not specifically today, but it is something we discuss.
But those debates are important. Hello, Leo.
Very.
Welcome, Leo. Lovely to see you. How are you, Leo?
Hi, how are you?
Hello. So Leo, say hello to a few thousand people busy watching us at the moment. So Leo, say hello to everyone. To you too, and I love your pajamas.
Thanks, Howie.
So Benji, this in fact, someone who lives in your home just so happens to be Amanda Porter, who was on one of our webinars a few weeks ago, and it was a webinar of culture eats strategy for breakfast. And she said one of the most memorable lines, I think, from all of our 84 webinars so far. And she said, we've learned to live with imperfection. A year ago, if you're having a webinar or you're online and your kid walks in with the pajamas, people say, oh, that's unprofessional. Now, when that happens, you say, oh, cute. Hello, Leo. And everyone wants to chat. And that's become, we've normalized our everyday lives, and we've brought our families and our normality into the surroundings. And it just makes us all much more human.
I guess that's also why sorry, Benji.
No. I was just going to say we got married 22 years ago. So she said that then. She learned to live with imperfection, but I do think that that's part of the beauty of what we've learned, is that we actually understand that people have lives and we're more connected to those lives, and it's normalized. And actually the point about the important issue about women in work and kind of the multiple roles that they play, that's become much more normalized, which is a very good thing. It's a fantastic thing.
So the time has just gone 2 minutes past 7.
Okay.
And we want to welcome everyone around the globe to our annual celebration of Pesach, the unity of the Jewish people at this moment of liberation. And it is so wonderful that we are joined tonight by singers and comedians and chazans and rabbis from all over the world, from every different aspect of this broad tent that is the Jewish community. People have joined us to celebrate human rights, to celebrate human dignity, and to celebrate our freedom and our liberation in the story that we tell of the Exodus from Egypt. So Peter, before we begin, the Jewish Report, the latest edition, is out. You're editor of the Jewish Report newspaper. Tell us what's on the front cover of this week's edition and what should we be expecting next week?
Aha. On the front cover of our edition this week, we speak about what's happening at WITS and the Jewish students who have been involved in the protest. One of whom, I can't actually think of her name right this minute.
Gabby Farber.
Gabby. Gabby is, I find Gabby quite astonishingly brave, and how she goes where angels fear to tread. And it reminds me, Howie, as you were saying in the past about the days when we were activists, it's incredible to see someone who's showing this kind of bravery in our community. So we speak about what's happening in the WITS protests, and inside she also writes a piece about why this is important for her and why she believes other students should join, other Jewish students. I find that fascinating. And what else is in the newspaper? Well, what can you expect next week? Well, next week you can expect some incredible recipes for Pesach, especially for you and your mom, Howie.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
And some amazing stories about Pesach and by thought leaders in our community, and a host of news to add to that. So we're going to have a real bumper edition this week.
That's amazing. So Peter, people can obviously pick up a hard copy edition, and they can go to CNA or Exclusive Books or Spar or Checkers or Pick and Pay, Discam, their local garage shop, their shul, their school. Danny, how many locations are we distributing through?
I think about 237, Howard.
237, plus we're still delivering to people's blocks of flats and townhouses all over the place. So there's no excuse to not pick up an edition of the Jewish Report. But also, Danny, we've got a new website, and the website is mobile friendly. Give us the web address.
So the address is www.sajr.co.za. Very simple and very easy to remember, www.sajr.co.za. That is our new website. It is gorgeous and it is mobile friendly. So please, after this webinar, go and hang around there, read all the latest articles that we have. It's really fantastic.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Danny. And Dina, thank you for joining us. You've just gotten back from the Val. We were just launching a competition for the best grain in Johannesburg. I'm in representing my father. Danny's in representing his next door neighbor. I trust you're in representing your father as well, whose grain is very, very famous. And we're asking people watching, if you would like to participate in our grain competition, please just leave us a message in the chat section on Zoom, on Facebook, or on YouTube, as well as send a blessing, send a greeting to the entire community around the world. Post your greeting in the chat section on Facebook, Zoom, or WhatsApp, or Facebook, Zoom, WhatsApp, or what we're missing out, YouTube. Put your message in so we can share these messages for a celebration of our freedom around the world. But one of the interesting things when we're putting tonight's program together is we reached out to people, and there's a magical music relating to Pesach. And the one person we'd reached out to was the very famous singer Shweki. And we said, can we use some of your music during our program tonight? And he said, not only can you do that, but I'm going to send you a message. I have a message for the South African Jewish community, and we'd love to play you that message right now.
Oh, do I love South African people. We are going to raise our glass on Chag Pesach, Passover, and we're going to be singing these words. What does that mean? It was to our fathers and our children. Every single generation, we face challenges, but the bottom line is we're one nation, unified as one, and we all believe in the same God. We raise our glass and we say, God, you gave us Passover. You gave us so many beautiful holidays. You gave us our people. There's nobody knows this better than the South African people. Oh, how I love to perform for them, because their heart is in it. This is what they're all about. We want to bless you guys. We continue to be together. We continue to love each other. No matter what background we're from, we love each other. And oh, this year we had so many challenges. But at the end of the day, we love each other and we are one. And this is what it's all about. This guy in the video was a little younger. It's a few years ago. But I have the zechut, I had the merit that everybody sings this song at their Seder and raises the glass. And this is what it's all about. Let's raise our glass together this Pesach and be unified as one nation, one heart. This is what it's all about. And I hope to come to South Africa soon for all you guys. Everybody should feel free this Passover. This is what it's all about. But freedom is in the mind. Let's feel free. And this is the best nation in the world. We're all together as one. Thank you so much, guys. Have a great holiday. And Bezat Hashem, we'll see you soon. Thank you, guys.
What a beautiful message from Shweki. And one of the other messages that we received a little late, but we did want to play tonight, is we reached out to Rabbi Y.Y. Jacobson, one of the most famous rabbis and orators in the world. And he gave us a message because the story of Pesach really is passing the story of freedom and liberation from one generation to the next generation. And he wanted to deliver us a message about the importance of speaking to your children and the ability to communicate honestly and openly in that relationship, and to be able in every generation to tell every story.
It's such a fascinating and interesting custom. been going on, who knows, hundreds, maybe thousands of years in every Jewish home. In the beginning of the Seder, we take a matzah, we break it into two pieces. The larger part, we hide as the Afikoman. But somehow, our children are the ones who discover the Afikoman. They retrieve it from its hiding place, and they are the ones who return the Afikoman to us, usually for a nice prize. In my days, the poorer children were happy with a black and white or a Danish or a Bell bag of potato chips. The wealthier kids got a calculator, and the really rich kids got a Parker pen. You remember the Parker pen? Today, if you probably give your son a Parker pen for the Afikoman, he'll sue you. It's more like a Lamborghini, a private jet, a private yacht. A poor family, okay, iPhone 12 they'll settle for. But what is really the significance of this? Of the children finding the Afikoman and returning it to us. And perhaps there's a profound symbolism here. What we hide, our children expose. For so many generations, we felt compelled to repress so many emotions, so many feelings, so many experiences, not because of any evil intent, but simply as a survival skill, as a coping mechanism. Those emotions that were too difficult to handle, to bear, to contain, to deal with, we suppressed or we repressed, and they have been in hiding for years, decades, centuries. But in our generation, our children are finding the Afikomans everywhere, and they're bringing them all to the fore. They somehow cannot deal anymore with all those traumas and all those repressed emotions being hidden. Everything is now coming out, and it's hard for us. There's so much resistance. Things that I have worked so hard, consciously or unconsciously, to hide, to repress in the subconscious, now coming out. I don't want to see my Afikoman. But our children are saying, Tati, Mommy, if we want to be free, if we want to get out of our inner psychological and emotional exile, we have to be able to face these secrets. We have to be able to look at them. We have to be able to create space for them with compassion, so that ultimately we can turn them into springboards for awareness, and allow these very forces to rejuvenate, renew, and transform our lives. Only when we're ready to face our tzafun, to face those hidden Afikomans that our children bring to the fore, can we all be set free individually and collectively and declare together next year in Jerusalem.
Thank you so much. And with that, I'd asked tonight that members of the board of the Jewish Report and our senior staff join us, just so we can all take a bow. This is our 84th webinar of lockdown. And you've seen all of these faces on your screen over the last year: Benji Porter, Herschel Jarvis, Dina Diamond, Peter Cross-Morner, Danny Kadar. So on behalf of all of us, we just wanted to say thank you so much for joining us for 84 remarkable webinars. We wish you all a Chag Sameach. So to all the board, to our senior staff, to everyone who works at the Jewish Report, just a huge thank you. And a thank you to our community for allowing us into their homes and their hearts to be able to celebrate all of these remarkable festivals with them.
Chag Sameach, everyone.
Chag Sameach. Thank you.
Chag Sameach.
And Howie, to you, thank you for leading from the front, and you really have been the face and the voice of the Jewish Report over this remarkable year. To you and to your family, Chag Pesach Sameach, and good health.
Absolutely.
And blessings.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you, guys. We're going to turn off our cameras and let us all begin. 3,200 years ago, the children of Israel were led from slavery in Egypt to freedom in Israel, the land which God had promised to us and our forefathers. So important was this act of national self-liberation that we are commanded in each generation to retell the story of our exodus from Egypt as if we ourselves were freed from slavery from Pharaoh in Egypt. And therein lies the underpin of human rights of everything that is Jewish. We were strangers in a strange land, and with an outstretched arm, God delivered us from oppression to emancipation. And today, on the 21st of March, where we celebrate Human Rights Day in South Africa, we recount the story as well that 61 years ago, not far away from where I'm sitting today, about 7,000 people arrived on the dusty streets of Sharpeville, determined to return their passes, a symbol of apartheid and oppression. And police opened fire. By the end of the day, 69 people lay dead, 180 people were injured. And so we cannot start telling the story of our Seder, the story of our liberation, without saying that this too is the bread of affliction which our ancestors ate in the land of Egypt. Let all who are hungry come join us and eat. Let all who are in need of the story, let them come and celebrate the Passover with us. Because now we are here, but next year we'll be in the land of Israel. Now we're in faith. Next year we'll be free men and women. So on behalf of the South African Jewish Report, I welcome you to the 84th webinar of lockdown. Let us all celebrate our freedom together.
Our daily deeds as ordinary South Africans must produce an actual South African reality that will reinforce humanity's belief in justice, strengthen its confidence in the nobility of the human soul, and sustain all our hopes for a closeless life for all. All this we owe both to ourselves and to the peoples of the world. What is, after all, a common victory for justice, for peace, for human dignity? We trust that you will continue to stand by us as we tackle the challenges of building peace, prosperity, non-sexism, non-racialism, and democracy. The time for the healing of the wounds has come. The moment to bridge the chasms that divides us has come. The time to build is upon us. We have triumphed in the effort to implant hope in the breasts of the millions of our people. We enter into a covenant that we shall build a society in which all South Africans, both black and white, will be able to walk tall without any fear in their hearts, assured of their inalienable right to human dignity, a rainbow nation at peace with itself and the world. Never, never, and never again shall it be that this beautiful land will again experience the oppression of one by another and suffer the indignity of being the skunk of the world. The sun shall never set on so glorious a human achievement. Let freedom reign. God bless Africa. I thank you.
Benji Porter, can you believe it's 84 webinars that we've done since lockdown has begun? And what a journey it's been. Do you remember what life was like exactly a year ago? Erev Pesach a year ago, we were all in a complete panic, and we started a webinar. We had our first Pesach webinar, and we discovered that people didn't have access to Pesach food, couldn't get hold of matzah, were in lockdown. Some of people had corona in isolation. They couldn't access Pesach food anywhere.
You know how it was remarkable? We were busy with this webinar, and all of a sudden on the chat, which we weren't really so used to the chat and the chat interface, we started seeing people asking us how to get matzah and how to get different types of food. And I know that you and I were WhatsApping each other. We really didn't know where to go with it. And so we asked people to forward us if their name and what they require. And we got requests from London. And I know we contacted friends in London to go help people with matzah. And we got numerous requests around different areas of Johannesburg. And the amazing part of that time was as many requests that we got, we just were able to fulfill it. And we were able to find people to assist and find people to help drop off. And it was really one of the starts of the most remarkable journey I know of my life.
So there were people in Cape Town, in Johannesburg, in London, in Australia, in Durban. And that's where we actually began this journey, seeing what good we could do over our webinar series to try see. And not only did we deliver kosher food and deliver matzah and deliver Pesach food, but we raised money for the Chevra Kadisha, we raised money for Africa Tikkun, for school kids. I mean, just a few weeks ago, we raised about close to 400,000 Rand for starving artists in the country. It's been quite a journey over the last 84 webinars, but it's not just about the webinars, because, you know, at the start of lockdown as well, a year ago, we started making sure that people could get access to the Jewish Report newspaper. We start delivering to townhouses and blocks of flats, completely uneconomic to do that, but we needed to make sure that we could build community and keep our community together during the most impossibly difficult time. So we've certainly been around telling your story for 23 years now as the Jewish Report, and for 84 lockdowns and 50 editions of the Jewish Report newspaper. But to be quite honest, we have salaries to pay. Everyone you see tonight, Benji, myself, Dina, Herschel, Sean, we're all volunteers doing all of this, but we do have to make sure that the Jewish Report survives, that we can pay our editor, Peter Crossmonda, and we can pay Danny's salary and the other journalists, the people who are making sure that we're holding our community together during this important time. And so we're going to ask you, if you participated in any of our webinars, if you've been reading on newspaper, now's the time to be quite honest, and we realize there's so many different demands on your wallet. But if you're able to, at this point in time, we're going to ask you to please give generously, and we're going to ask Danny to please put on the screen, and we're begging you for some donations at this point in time. And we do understand you have many, many needs, but if you do have the ability and the capacity and some spare cash, we'd really appreciate if you could help us making sure that we can continue the remarkable work that we started exactly 1 year ago.
יש לנו הפתעה הלילה. יונתן רוזל, איפה אתה?
אז ערב טוב לכולם, באמת זה אירוע מאוד מרגש, גם בזמן מאוד מרגש. והשיר הזה, מילים מתוך ההגדה של פסח.
Arranged by Jonathan himself. אבותינו והישעמדו לבסינו ולנו שלא אחד בלבד עומד עלינו לכאן נשינו עומד עלינו לכאן נשינו
והיא שעמדה לאבותינו והיא שעמדה לאבותינו ולנו שלא אחד בלבד עמד עלינו לכלותנו עמד עלינו לכלותנו
הקדוש ברוך הוא מצילנו ימצילנו ימיודו הקדוש ברוך הוא מצילנו ימצילנו ימיודו
והיא שעמדה לאבותינו והיא שעמדה לאבותינו ולנו שלא אחד בלבד עומד עלינו לכלותנו עומד עלינו לכלותנו
הקדוש ברוך הוא מצילנו ימצילנו ימיודו הקדוש ברוך הוא מצילנו ימצילנו ימיודו
שלא אחד בלבד עמד עלינו לכלותנו לכלותנו
הקדוש ברוך הוא מצילנו הקדוש ברוך הוא מצילנו ימיודו
אתם כבר צריכים להכיר את זה. לה 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 לה
תודה רבה, יונתן רוזן.
Can I get control over my business's finances? With Absa Cashflow Manager, I can. Cashflow Manager is an award-winning online business management and accounting solution. Developed by entrepreneurs for entrepreneurs, it's unlike any system that you've seen before. It requires no accounting knowledge, and you will be amazed at how easy it is to exercise control over your business's finances. Cashflow Manager is designed for small businesses and allows you to manage your contacts, do quotes and invoicing, and even your payroll. It helps you to keep track of all the money used in the business, be it your own or the business's. It delivers simple reports so that you can see who you owe and who owes you at any time of the month. It also reports on cash flow to help you stay on top of your finances. As an online solution, you can access your business data from anywhere at any time. And of course, all your information is securely backed up 24/7. It also reduces bookkeeping costs and provides your accountant with easy access to the information required to compile financial statements. Our comprehensive user support options, including video tutorials, live text chat, and a support center, ensure that you know how to use the system effectively during and after office hours. Get a business solution that provides you with control and flexibility. Register for Cashflow Manager on absa.co.za. We do more so you can. That's Africanacity.
At the beginning of the Magid section of your Seder, you might be reading or singing something that goes, Halachma anya di achalu avhatana ba'ara de Mitzrayim. Kol dichvin yetei v'yechol, kol ditzrich yetei v'yifsach. Kol dichvin yetei v'yechol, let all who are hungry come and eat. Wow, what a radical idea. But can we do that under Corona? We know we can't. But did we do that before there was coronavirus? We know we can't invite all of the hungry in this year, but did we do that before? Let all who are needy come and celebrate Pesach. What a radical view the rabbis had of what Pesach meant. It wasn't just us celebrating our freedom. It was us inviting everybody that needed to partake in our freedom. Radical hospitality, a radical view of home, of space, of food distribution. Now, under Corona, we have learned a lot about what it means to be hungry. We have seen in South Africa the queues for food and the fact that there is not equal access to the resources that have helped us survive this pandemic. When the BLM protests erupted, the Black Lives Matter protests, we knew that people in South Africa who were people of color are much more likely to have food insecurity than those who are identified here as white. That's what Pesach does and always has done, in that it highlights our history as slaves, the Jewish people. What did we have to do at the moment of leaving Egypt? We had to gather what we had, make our food in a hurry, and run. This is the reality of so many people that live in the world today. Halachma Anya says a strange thing. It says, Hashata avdei. Now we are slaves. I thought we were free. But we know that slavery exists today. We know that it exists within us. We are slaves to habits that do not serve us, that damage us and people around us. And we know that slavery exists physically out there in the world. Bonded labor, forced labor, child labor, human trafficking. It happens out there. It happens in front of our noses every day. People are impacted by real slavery. And that is what Pesach highlights for us. Slavery, hunger, poverty. Once we were slaves, and Hashem brought us out of slavery with a strong hand and an outstretched arm. L'shana haba b'nei chorin. Next year shall we be free? Well, let us free ourselves and let us free those around us. And freedom means that we have the agency and the ability and the responsibility to work towards a more just and fair South Africa and world. The rabbis of Bnei Brak used the Pesach Seder to plan a revolution against the Romans. Pesach was always revolutionary. What act of injustice are we going to fight in the next year? What wrong will we right? What world are you going to create this Pesach?
But we refuse to believe that the Bank of Justice is bankrupt. We refuse to believe that there are insufficient funds in the great vaults of opportunity of this nation. So we've come to cash this check, a check that will give us upon demand the riches of freedom and the security of justice. But that is something that I must say to my people who stand on the warm threshold which leads into the palace of justice. In the process of gaining our rightful place, we must not be guilty of wrongful deeds. Let us not seek to satisfy our thirst for freedom by drinking from the cup of bitterness and hatred. We must forever conduct our struggle on the high plane of dignity and discipline. Let freedom ring, and when this happens, and when we allow freedom ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
Hello, it's me, Gilly. In thinking about what to talk about in this video, I thought, let me actually just look at what Pesach is, because I've forgotten everything that I learned at King David. And so I thought, let me turn to Wikipedia and see what pops out, The term Pesach may also refer to the lamb or goat, which was designated as the Passover sacrifice. Why is it always a poor sheep that has to... We saw what happened in Clifton. It's one of 3 pilgrimage festivals. We all know that the first is Pesach, the second is, and the third, they didn't teach us anything at that school. In the Bible, Passover marks the exodus of the children of Israel from Egyptian slavery when God passed over, I don't know why Wikipedia has this in inverted commas, passed over. He did pass over. He passed over the houses of the Israelites during the last of the 10 plagues. So basically this oath just came at the last minute. Where were you for the first 9 plagues, bro? For a people who have been commemorating a plague for thousands of years, it's amazing to me that we didn't see this current plague coming. The Paschal lamb was offered and eaten on Passover Eve, while the wave offering of barley was offered on the second day of the festival. You see, and this is the beginning of Jewish people's strong ties to carbohydrates. And then what do they do on Pesach? They make you stop eating it for 7 days. Classic Judaism. They give us something we love, and then they take it away. Challah, 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 no challah. Boring, boring, boring. Matzah. Let's talk about matzah. I've always believed that it's not that the Jews were in such a hurry that they had to leave before the bread rose. They were in such a hurry they couldn't charge their cell phones, and that's why they spent 40 years in the desert. The Passover Seder. I want to remind you that this could be the last year where you get to use COVID as an excuse for not inviting certain people to your Seder. I know, my table usually seats 15, but with the restrictions, it can only seat 7. I know you're my husband, but, I'm just following the rules. During this meal, the story of the Exodus of Egypt is retold using a special text called the Haggadah. We like to relive drama in this culture. Foods: gefilte fish, I have never met a fish cake that I liked. Chrein. I like that word. Chrein. Why can Jewish people say chrein but not chebecha? Here's a question. The Afikoman. The leader breaks the middle piece of the matzah in two. And in my family, my father does this. He's very tall, and so this ensures that no one can ever find the Afikoman because it's somewhere completely out of reach, which is to teach Jewish children that your dreams will always be out of reach. I hope you have a wonderful Pesach and you stay strong through the absence of carbohydrates. We've been through a lot and we can get through this as well. We shall overcome. Chag Sameach.
As we ready ourselves for Pesach in just a few days, I wonder if you've ever thought about the strange creature that matzah and chometz really are. They are two sides of the same coin. They're exactly the same, but one is fraught with danger and punishment and the worst things, the worst averas if you eat it at the wrong time, while the other is this tremendous mitzvah that remembers our slavery and our freedom. That very matzah we raise up and we say, this matzah that we eat, al shumma. Why do we do it? To remember that Hashem took us out of Egypt before we let our dough rise. The Torah calls it the Chag HaMatzot. Hashem's so proud of us that we did that. We didn't wait. We left when He told us to leave. But on the other hand, it's also the Lechem Oini. It's this bread of affliction. So what is matzah and chometz? What is it really if it's exactly the same ingredient? Flour, water, that's it. Same thing. If chometz was so evil and so bad and stay far away from it, Hashem should have said we should eat bananas for 7 days or 8 days in Chutz La'aretz. 8 days in the diaspora. Bananas is what thou shalt eat. Because, you don't want to come to eating this water and flour mixture that can become chometz. And as I said, fraught with such danger. So why do we live so dangerously in Judaism? Why do we eat the very same thing, the matzah and the chometz? Why don't we steer clear away from it for 8 days? So a friend of mine, a rabbi friend of mine, yes, rabbis have friends and also rabbi friends. Rabbi David Aaron tells a beautiful story of when he was a Rebbe at Aisha Torah, that there was a guy there studying who decided he's not going to go to the lectures on belief in God. And when the Rosh Hashiva said, why are you not coming? He said, I don't need lectures. I don't need to prove that there's a God because I know there's God. I don't need to come to a lecture to hear about proving that God exists. I know God exists. He says, oh really? How do you know that? And he answered that he was a bit of a daredevil in his past life. And he was going at a breakneck speed on his motorbike, and he flew off the edge of a cliff. And he could swear that 2 great hands grabbed him, caught him, broke his fall, and slowly put him down on the ground. And he said, you see, Rabbi, I know there's Hashem. I know there's a God in this world. I don't need to come to a lecture about Hashem. But of course the Rosh Hashiva, I don't know if it was Rabbi Weinberg, but the Rosh Hashiva said, but who do you think pushed you off the cliff in the first place? You know what? The reason we eat the matzah and the reason why matzah and chometz are exactly the same thing is because what we understand or perceive in life to be slavery is also the beginning of our redemption. You can't truly be free until you've been a slave. If you just had freedom all the time, if you just had holiday all the time without any work preceding that holiday, the holiday isn't a holiday. And what Hashem is teaching us is that the very same ingredient that makes chometz also makes matzah. And the tzoros and the difficulties that we go through in life are also the very keys to our freedom and redemption. Chag Sameach.
It is so much easier to look away from victims. It is so much easier to avoid such rude interruptions to our work, our dreams, our hopes. It is, after all, awkward, troublesome to be involved in another person's pain and despair. Rooted in our tradition, some of us felt that to be abandoned by humanity then was not the ultimate. We felt that to be abandoned by God was worse than to be punished by Him. Better an unjust God than an indifferent one. For us to be ignored by God was a harsher punishment than to be a victim of His anger. Man can live far from God, not outside God. God is wherever we are, even in suffering, even in suffering. In a way, to be indifferent to that suffering is what makes the human being inhuman. Indifference, after all, is more dangerous than anger and hatred. But indifference is never creative. Even hatred at times may elicit a response. You fight it. You denounce it. You disarm it. Indifference elicits no response. Indifference is not a response. Indifference is not a beginning. It is an end. And therefore, indifference is always the friend of the enemy, for it benefits the aggressor, never his victim whose pain is magnified when he or she feels forgotten. The political prisoner in his cell, the hungry children, the homeless refugees, not to respond to their plight, not to relieve their solitude by offering them a spark of hope, is to exile them from human memory. And in denying their humanity, we betray our own. Indifference, then, is not only a sin, it is a punishment.
When we think of the Pesach Seder, we think of matzah, maror, bitter herbs, and of course, the 4 cups of wine. The famous reason given why we drink 4 cups of wine is because in the land of Egypt, God used 4 expressions of redemption. He said, V'hotzeiti, I will take you out. V'hitzalti, I will save you. V'ga'alti, I will redeem you. V'lakachti, and I will take you. And so we drink 4 cups of wine to remember each of those 4 expressions. But there is another beautiful reason given why 4 cups of wine. Each cup of wine represents one of our matriarchs, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah. We begin the Seder with Kaddish, step number 1, Kiddush. Kiddush is when we sanctify the day, sanctify the Chag of Pesach. Kiddush is about thanking God for sanctifying us as his nation, giving us his commandments, making us his unique nation. This represents Sarah. Sarah was married to Abraham. Together, this power couple managed to educate and teach an entire generation who previously worshipped idols. They taught them about godliness, about spirituality, about serving one God. And so with the first cup of wine, which is said over Kiddush, we commemorate Sarah, who used all her efforts to ensure a nation would come about that would sanctify God's name. The second cup of wine, we drink it at the end of Magid. Magid is all about when we speak about our origin, where the Jewish people came from. Abraham's fathers were idol worshippers, and from these idol worshippers came this magnificent nation, the people of Israel, who finally were redeemed from Egypt. Our foremother Rebecca followed a similar path. She too came from a home of idol worshippers, yet she managed to overcome that idolatrous nature inside of her, and she was able to become the foremother of the nation of Israel. And so the second cup of wine, we commemorate Rebecca, who overcame her idolatrous background and became the mother of the nation of Israel. We drink the third cup of wine at the end of benching. When we say grace after the meal, when we feel full and satisfied. This is the cup of Rachel. Rachel was the mother of an incredible boy, a man by the name of Joseph, second to the king in the land of Egypt. Joseph managed to sustain an entire nation and nations around during the years of famine when there was nothing left to eat. And so isn't it fitting that we commemorate Rachel at the end of benching? When we talk about how we're feeling satisfied, we commemorate this woman, the mother of such a man that was able to sustain the nation around him. And finally, the fourth cup of wine, we drink it after Hallel. Hallel is when we praise God for bringing us out of Egypt, for all the incredible miracles that he performed. This cup is synonymous with our fourth mother, Leah. Leah knew that her husband, Jacob, would have 4 wives. She also knew that Jacob would have 12 children, and so she did the maths. She worked out 12 children, 4 wives, well, each wife would have 3 children, and so she had her 3 children. But when she gave birth to her 4th son, she was so overcome with gratitude to God that she called him Yehuda. And she said, Hapa'am odeh et Hashem. This time I will praise, I will thank God, because he gave me something that I didn't expect. I didn't expect to have a 4th child. And so Leah taught us what it means to be grateful, to praise, and to thank. And isn't it fitting that at the end of Hallel, after we praise God for bringing us out of Egypt, we drink the 4th cup of wine and commemorate Leah, who taught us how to praise God. And so it is that throughout the Seder, from the first step of Kiddush all the way to the very end, we thread the 4 cups of wine through, and we think about our incredible foremothers who brought forth this powerful nation of Israel. The Seder is all about remembering those incredible women in our lives. And when you think of them, drink a l'chaim for each one of them. Wishing all our viewers a Chag Pesach Kosher v'Sameach. Please God, it should be a yontiv of liberation, a Chag of freedom for all of us.
Ooh. Eloheinu Hashem Elokeinu Misham B'yad Chazaka Ubizron Etuya Ubizron Etuya
Great joy to extend a Chag Sameach, a good Yontif to you, Howard, to all of your followers of your webinars, which have been a godsend and a lifesaver through very difficult times and challenges over the last year. I wish my brothers and sisters here in South Africa and around the world and all of humanity a Chag Pesach Kasher v'Sameach. May we have a true festival and season of redemption and freedom. But what does it mean to think about freedom and emergence from slavery? So much so that the Haggadah actually says the words, God, if you did not take us out of Egypt then, in biblical times, then today, Meshubadim Hayinu leFarao, we would still be slaves to Pharaoh. Today. But what does that mean? We don't have a Pharaoh. Pharaoh's moved on. We don't have an ancient Egypt that wants to enslave us. So what are we meaning by freedom and slavery? And yes, tragically, and we pray for such individuals who are really subjected to slavery even today, in the form of human trafficking, in the form of human abuses to other people, in the form of regimes that do not allow people to realize their aspirations in many countries around the world. But for most of us, we're free. We wake up in the morning and we can do what we want with our lives. We can do anything. So what are we talking about being free and emancipated? So let's go through some of the debilitating elements of our lives which enslave us in one way or another. We are creatures of habit. We are stuck in the way we've always done things. We often look at our future and say, we cannot move on and change because this is the way I've always done it. This is me. This is what defines me. We become so practiced and rehearsed in the way we do things that we repeat and we repeat and we repeat. Sometimes, tragically, we even become dependent on things around us so that our addictions do not allow us to escape the present moment. We are enslaved by imposing on ourselves the restrictions and the limitations that do not allow us to make the free choices every single day of our life because we're stuck. We are enslaved by peer pressure. How many times do the considerations of our lives and the decisions that we make become based on what people around us are thinking or feeling or doing? We have an essential need to be recognized by people around us. They determine whether we're happy or sad by the amount of recognition or lack of it that they extend to us. We look at their lifestyles and we say, how come I am living in such meager conditions when so-and-so is living better? And we enslave ourselves further through our credit cards, which become the tools of keeping up with the Cohens down the block. We live in the shadows of other people around us, and that too becomes an element of servitude and slavery. We have an enslavement of emotions that are born out of wrecked relationships, where love turns to hate, where there's anger, where there's resentment, where we feel done by, and we allow people to consume our hearts and to fill our minds rent-free every single day of our life. We wake up and we are consumed by the feelings that we have of being victims to other people around us. And that feeling hangs so heavily over us that we are enslaved with a heaviness of heart and mind. We are slaves because of our own self-doubt and apathy. We sometimes just cannot see ourselves as a success. We look down at ourselves. We only see our elements of weakness. And we become the chains that hold us down, because if we don't believe in ourselves, for sure, we're going to be unable to succeed. The indifference and the apathy and the lack of belief in ourselves could become such a debilitating element in life from which we need to be redeemed. And then there is the slavery that is born out of prejudice and intolerance. We look around at people and we divide and say this one matters and this one doesn't matter, and we build the walls which then become the isolation cubicles, evoking loneliness, being separate, having no ability to communicate because we have drawn the lines that don't allow us to interact freely between people, even if they have different opinions and have so many differences, because we allow them to overshadow the common humanity which we share. So slavery can come in the form of being inhibited by our own prejudice. And we have a slavery that comes in the form of our inability to dream, to have horizons, to say, lift our eyes and say, this is what I want to achieve, this is what I hope, this is what I can accomplish. We end the Seder night, L'Shana Haba B'Yerushalayim, next year in Jerusalem, because we always end with hope. We look beyond the present predicament and circumstances and we say, tomorrow can be better, tomorrow will be better. I believe in a better tomorrow. And when we have the optimism and the faith and the belief in a better tomorrow, that lifts our sights, that gives us a spring in our heels when we wake up in the morning, not to be tied down and stuck in the elements of the past. And so this Pesach, let's tell the story of freedom, about biblical freedom, but let's trace it down to our every single day. Let's wake up with hope. Let's wake up with a commitment to a better tomorrow. Let us dream about the Yerushalayim and the future of the world completely redeemed. Let the Matzah remind us that humility, that taking up less space, that being real and true, and not overindulgent in our self-praise, let that become the diminishing of ego, which becomes the catalyst for so many of these slaveries about which we have spoken. Have a beautiful Yom Tov, have a Chag Sameach, and let us truly be free.
For man holds in his mortal hands the power to abolish all forms of human poverty and all forms of human life. And yet the same revolutionary beliefs for which our forebears fought are still at issue around the globe. The belief that the rights of man come not from the generosity of the state, but from the hand of God. We dare not forget today that we are the heirs of that first revolution. Let the word go forth from this time and place to friend and foe alike that the torch has been passed to a new generation of Americans born in this century, tempered by war, disciplined by a hard and bitter peace, proud of our ancient heritage, and unwilling to witness or permit the slow undoing of those human rights to which this nation has always been committed and to which we are committed today at home and around the world.
Benji, the one thing that we've learned over the last maybe 12 months is the fact that community has changed. People aren't necessarily going to shul, people aren't having big Shabbat dinners, and people won't be having massive Seders this year. You know, I'm used to having 40 people at Seder, and this year there's going to be 3 of us. But we've really substituted and found a different way to build community over the last 12 months.
You know, Howie, I want to take a step back. If you remember why we started the first webinar, was simply we wanted to bring medical knowledge. And then we were worried about mental wellness and things like that. So we explored those topics. And then we had the Pesach and all of that, which we've spoken about. And we realized that we had to provide a town hall. And I remember when we had Simon Sinek, we asked him what does he miss the most? And he said, casual interactions. And it was so, like, you thought he was going to come up with this very profound thing, but actually it turned out to be very profound. And that's what we wanted to do in our own strange way, that we knew that part of providing those interactions were some of the comments. And have all the comments been nice and flattering? No. And have they all been exactly what we wanted? No. But that's what community is, and that's what community building is, and listening to each other and exploring new ideas and exploring things we never knew about, and hearing about spas and heroes and all different stories. And we built this town hall because that's what our mission of trying to build a community is providing this town hall where we explored so many different stories. Like Robin Hood. Who knew that Robin Hood wasn't just a mythical character trying to steal from the rich and give to the poor? And I can go through numerous. We had Andre de Ruyter, who I think preferred being interviewed by us than anyone else, and telling us on a Saturday night at 10 o'clock. And it just goes on and on. And that was really a deep mission. And it's been, I know we discuss it often, the entire board, the kind of work that you've put in to make it work, but it's just been such a rewarding experience to provide that in terms of like part of our commitment to community building.
But, you know, Benji, we love the fact that people come and they use the chat and they kibbutz and they ask questions and they complain and they tell us where in the world they are, because that's really what community is all about. And, you know, whether it's a town hall or a town square, like we've just recreated that environment for people stuck in their own homes because of Corona and still being able to participate in something much bigger. And tonight's broadcast as well is about being part of World Jury. Listening to rabbis and chazanim from around the world, whether it's the UK or Ireland or Israel or America, we're all part of one people. We're all part of the Jewish people. And that's what makes all of this just so unique. We've managed to recreate community, not just in our own homes, in our own shul settings, in our own community, but we've recreated the Jewish people. And the numbers have just been astounding. You know, for Jewish Achiever Awards, we had somewhere between 50 and 60,000 people watching online. Simon Sinek, 36,000 people watched live. If you remember when we tried to kickstart the South African economy, we had over 30,000 people on. The Minister of Finance tried to get in and we just couldn't fit Tito Mboweni in. There wasn't enough room. And, you know, even we celebrated the Isaac Ochberg and the story of the Ochberg orphans on Sunday evening. And 15,000 people are watching from around the world. And it's just been so heartening in all of this, just to rebuild community in a new vision and a new era. And that's why we're asking people as well, if you've enjoyed anything that we've done, if you felt part of this community, if we've taken you a little bit away from that loneliness and made you feel part of something bigger, we're just going to ask you to please make a donation, because a huge amount of effort has gone into this. And we've got a newspaper to run, we've got staff to pay, and we'd really appreciate just a small share of your wallet. So please, if you're able to do it, and we do understand that times are tough and economics are tough and everyone's making a demand on your finances at the moment, but if you can spare some money for us, we're going to please ask you just to answer our poll. And our poll is simply going to say, if you're able to, please make a donation and help making sure that the South African Jewish Report can continue to do what it's done over the last 12 months.
It is my great joy and privilege to send from here Yerushalayim HaKodesh a message for Chag Pesach to South African Jewry that has such a special place in my heart, as the years of my rabbinate in South Africa were seminal to my vocation, and indeed in South Africa I began my first involvement in interreligious relations, both out of a desire to protect the Jewish community and combat negative stereotypes and misunderstanding, and above all to pursue the values that the Torah in Sefer Bereshit, Perek Yudchet, describe as the defining qualities of the household of Avraham Avinu, justice and righteousness. One might have expected that after all our negative experiences of persecution and bondage in Egypt, that we would have been entitled to have certain negative attitudes towards the inhabitants of that society. But the Torah specifically warns us in Sefer Dvarim, Perek Kaf Gimel, Lo t'ta'ev Mitzri ki gerim hayita ba'arzo. You shall not spurn, hate the Egyptian, for you were strangers in his land. In other words, despite the negative experience, we enjoyed hospitality and certain benefits in Egypt, and we must not be lacking in gratitude for that. This idea of universal regard for human life and dignity is, of course, expressed in a famous midrash that describes the angels wanting to sing a song when the children of Israel passed through the waters of the Red Sea and while the Egyptians were drowning behind them. The Almighty is presented as saying to them, Ma'aseh yadai tovim bayam v'atem tomru shira. My creatures, the work of my hands, are drowning in the sea, and you want to sing at this time? This midrash is used as the basis, as one of the reasons given for why we diminish from our cup of wine of celebration at the Seder meal when reciting the 10 plagues. And it is also a reason given in support of the fact that we only recite half Hallel during the latter days of the Chag. This concept, of course, is rooted in the very idea that every human person is created in the divine image. And indeed, Rabbi Tanchuma, commenting on the famous discussion between Akiva and Ben Azai on the most important principle of the Torah, declares that any act of disparagement, let alone of violence against another human person, is ultimately an act of disparagement against the Creator himself. The Tana Debi Eliyahu, the Midrashic work, Tana Debi Eliyahu Rabbah, Chaf Vav, adds a further reason as to why we need to be particularly concerned as to how we relate to the non-Jewish world. It points out that the very purpose of our existence as a Jewish people is to bring about a Kiddush Hashem, a sanctification of God's name in the world. And therefore, as the Gemara and the Rambam codifies, Kiddush Hashem is not just a matter of being able to face the most critical and even life-threatening situations as proud Jews. It is also a matter of how we conduct ourselves on a daily basis, and not just amongst ourselves, but above all in relation to the world, making the Almighty, His name, His word, and His message beloved to all humanity. This, of course, is a sacred challenge, and it is not simple to be worthy of it, but it is a great and wonderful honor. I hope that this Chag will inspire us to deepen our righteous and ethical conduct towards all, and wish you and yours a Chag Kasher v'Sameach.
I'm Heidi Brower, the Chief Marketing Officer of Halad Insurance. The world needs a fresh start. We've had a tough year. Now is a great time to come together with our friends and our family in a safe way, tell the story that we tell every year this time of redemption, of hope, of freedom. So we wish you, from all of us at Halad, Chag Sameach, be safe, and have a beautiful Pesach.
I am Cantor Julia Cadrain of Central Synagogue in New York City. To South African Jews and to Jews all around the world, I want to wish you a Chag Sameach, a happy Passover. May you find joy and meaning and richness in this season of renewal and redemption and freedom. I offer you the 4 questions. מה נשתנה הלילה הזה מכל הלילות, מכל הלילות, שבכל הלילות אנו אוכלים חמץ ומצה, חמץ ומצה. הלילה הזה, הלילה הזה, כולו מצה, הלילה הזה, הלילה הזה, כולו מצה. שבכל הלילות אנו אוכלים שאר ירקות, שאר ירקות. הלילה הזה, הלילה הזה, מרור, מרור. הלילה הזה, הלילה הזה, מרור, מרור. שבכל הלילות אין אנו מטבילים אפילו פעם אחת, אפילו פעם אחת. הלילה הזה, הלילה הזה, שתף עמים. הלילה הזה, הלילה הזה, שתף עמים. שבכל הלילות אנו אוכלים בין יושבין ובין מסובין, בין יושבין ובין מסובין. הלילה הזה, הלילה הזה, כולנו מסובין. הלילה הזה, הלילה הזה, כולנו מסובין.
Kilo lecho ki lecho lecho af lecho lecho af lecho lecho adoi shema melecho ki leinu 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 da gol bim locha hadr kalacho shinanav yamru ilay lecho 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 ki lecho lecho af lecho lecho af lecho lecho adoi shema melecho ki leinu ki leinu ki leinu ki leinu ki leinu ki leinu Nabo, the Zarin Nabo, this is the thing, love like Paradise by the leader. I've got your heart, the Zarin Nabo, this is the thing, love like Paradise by the leader. I've got your heart, the Shune Robin, your Legadio, the Zarin Nabo, the Zarin Nabo, Zarin Nabo, this is the thing, love like Paradise by the leader. I've got your heart. Above these places, they love like Paradise by the leader. Above these places, they love like Paradise by the leader. The show the shoiche, the shosulemayu, the shosulemayu, the fobalenu, the shobalenu, the fobalenu, the sabale fobalenu, the fobalenu, the afregadu, the afregadu.
A hearty how's it from Cape Town, South Africa. Is there place for every Jew within our community? The Hebrew word Seder, like Pesach Seder, means order. Within the order and implied strictures of our religion, its rituals and dogmas, is there really a place for every single Jew? Now it's interesting, the word place in Hebrew is makom. There are 4 instances in Jewish liturgy when we refer to God as the place, one of them being in the Pesach Seder, where before introducing the 4 sons, we say, Baruch HaMakom, Baruch Hu, blessed is the place, blessed is He. Why do we refer to God in this context as the place? So let us draw from the Midrash Rabbah. The Midrash makes a comment on another verse in Genesis, which speaks about how Jacob, when running away from his brother Esau, Vayifga b'makom, he encountered the place, that place where he had a dream with a ladder, with the angels going up and down. And the Midrash comments about the reference to God as the place with a creative turn of phrase in Hebrew, that God is the mekomo shel olam ve'ein olamo mekomo, which basically means that God is the place of the world, but the world is not God's place. What does this mean? It means basically that God is limitless, God is infinite. So while God is omnipresent, God is everywhere, but God is everywhere in this world, but He's not limited to this world. His presence transcends the physical reality of this world and extends to the spiritual dimensions of reality and beyond. God is truly infinite, but perhaps there's a deeper message here, and that is that just like God is infinite and each one of us has a part of God within us, it means that every single person has a makom, a place within God's world. This is why we say Baruch HaMakom, we refer to the place before the 4 sons in the Seder, in the Haggadah, because it's often easy to see how the Chacham, the wise son, has a place in the home, in the community, in God's world. But sometimes it's not easy to see where the place of the Rasha, of the wicked son, is. The wicked son is lost and confused, or perhaps the wicked son's parents and teachers are lost and confused as to how to relate to the Rasha, how to identify the Rasha's unique individual qualities and personality, and to nurture it, to allow it to shine, to flourish. And therefore, before the passage of the 4 sons, we say Baruch HaMakom. It's reminding us that within the scope of the Seder, the order and structure of Judaism, there is place for the entire heterogeneity of the Jewish people. That every single person, regardless of who they are, has a place. But there's just that one caveat, and that is that it's the responsibility of the parents, teachers, educators, each one of us to be a leader in our own homes, in our own communities, and to allow for the uniqueness, the unique individuality of every member of our community to shine in the greatest possible way. And so to answer our original question, is there a place? Is there really a place for every Jew within the structures of our homes and communities? The answer, the Haggadah is telling us, is a resounding yes. But it's the responsibility of each and every one of us to make it happen. Wishing you and your families a Chag Kasher V'Sameach.
Kosher World, your one-stop shop for everything that's kosher, especially this time of the year, with Pesach coming up, and also general merchandise, everything at everyday prices. And how convenient is it? We are open till 10 o'clock at night, every night. Of course, except Shabbos. Welcome to Kosher World.
Shalom, shalom, friends. I have had the wonderful opportunity to visit your country and be in the Jewish community in Cape Town and Johannesburg. And it's a delight to celebrate Pesach with you. Pesach, one of the most profound of holidays, where we celebrate with family when we can, where we relive the nostalgia of Jewish memory, where we dream of a liberated world. In particular, we learn in the Haggadah, Chayav Adam lirot et atzmo, kilu hu yotza mitzrayim, that each of us should view ourselves as if we ourselves are leaving Egypt, right? Radical empathy, elevated consciousness, not towards historical experience, but towards reliving that experience. Not just cognitive, but behavioral and affective and intellectual and spiritual. We want to awaken ourselves as if that's us. And friends, it's not only about us, but it's about those today experiencing what we experienced. Today, there are tens of millions of refugees in the world. Tens of millions more displaced, stateless people, people who are on the brink because of warfare, because of violence, because of poverty, who are at risk of losing their homes, their states, their protections, literally everything they know. And this is where our attention is moved towards. Friends, why should we care about immigrant rights and refugees and displaced persons? Firstly, this is our history as Jews. For 2,000 years, we have, through pogroms and crusades and Holocaust and everything under the sun, we were at risk. We were not citizens, and even when we were second-class citizens, we were not protected. This was our experience as Jews historically. Secondly, it's our texts. We are told over and over in the Torah to protect the foreigner, to stand up for justice for the immigrant, even to love this refugee, this ger, this foreigner, this outsider. And thirdly, in addition to our history, in addition to our texts, we know existentially that the text says that all of us are gerim as human beings. In front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in front of God, we are all passing through this earth so quickly. We will die momentarily. We know this about ourselves. And that doesn't lead us to vanity. That realizes a moral potentiality, a moral responsibility to leave this world better than we found it. To understand that when we walk on the earth, we don't own that earth. Yes, we have property rights, but we don't own the earth. We are gerim before God. Each of us, every human, is a visitor here on this planet. Friends, over here in Arizona, down on the Mexico-American border, we've been very busy for many years now, working to support asylum seekers who are fleeing deep violence and poverty in Mexico, in Guatemala, in Honduras, all throughout Mexico and Central America and South America, and even coming from the African continent. And we're doing our role here as much as possible to be Jews on the front line who are working to address those humanitarian needs. So friends, this Pesach, I hope you have a meaningful Seder. I hope the Seder is uplifting. And I hope it also can cultivate a spiritual consciousness in us of our responsibility towards refugees in the world because of our history, because of our texts, because of the existential human experience. And friends, that is what we're learning from the Haggadah, that we were slaves in Egypt, and we should never forget that. We should never forget our role here today. Chag Kasher B'Sameach.
King David made Jerusalem the capital of Israel almost 3,000 years ago, and Jerusalem has remained the capital ever since. During the centuries, the term Zion grew and expanded to mean the whole of Israel. The Israelites in exile could not forget Zion. The Hebrew psalmist sat by the waters of Babylon and swore If I forget thee, O Jerusalem, let my right hand forget its cunning. This oath has been repeated for thousands of years by Jews throughout the world. It is an oath which was made over 700 years before the advent of Christianity and over 1200 years before the advent of Islam. Bearing all these connotations in mind, Zion came to mean the Jewish homeland, symbolic of Judaism, of Jewish national aspirations. Every Jew praying to his God wherever he is in the world faces towards Jerusalem. These prayers have expressed for over 2,000 years of exile the yearning of the Jewish people to return to their ancient homeland Israel. In fact, a continuous Jewish presence in larger or smaller numbers has been maintained in the country over the centuries. Zionism is the name of the national movement of the Jewish people and is the modern expression of the ancient Jewish heritage. The Zionist ideal, as set out in the Bible, has been and is an integral part of the Jewish religion. Zionism is to the Jewish people what the liberation movements of Africa and Asia have been to their own people. Zionism is one of the most stirring and constructive national movements in human history. Historically, it is based on a unique and unbroken connection extending some 4,000 years through land. The re-establishment of Jewish independence in Israel, after centuries of struggle to overcome foreign conquest and exile, is a vindication of the fundamental concepts of the equality of nations and of self-determination.
I am sitting here in the U.S. this Pesach, so delighted to be linked to friends in the South African Jewish community and the South African Jewish Report family, sharing in our Seder ceremonies with Jews across the globe, all reflecting on the meaning of our ancient journey to freedom, on its lessons which have inspired so many others in their own struggles for freedom, and on the meaning of that dream of freedom for us today. So a reflection for a moment on freedom from the American perspective. The most famous 20th century formulation of freedom was embodied in President Franklin Delano Roosevelt's famous For Freedom speech given in 1941. It set forth as essential to the human condition freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom from want, and freedom from fear. 4 freedoms that Eleanor Roosevelt would 7 years later fight successfully to enshrine in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, to which the United States, South Africa, and every country in which Jews dwell are signatories. And how appropriate it is that we consider these fundamental human rights on South African Human Rights Day. 4 freedoms. Why this recollection as we ponder the meaning of freedom embodied in our Seder service and the Haggadah as they were constructed to memorialize our ancient journey? Think about the 4 cups of wine. The first, we say as part of the traditional prayers of a candle lighting, wine and food, variants of which structure our religious ritual life, celebrating what we eat at every holiday, every Shabbat. Many life cycle ceremonies, our first cup of wine represents freedom of prayer, of worship, freedom of religion. The second cup culminates the Magid, the telling of our story, freedom of speech. The third at the end of our meal, after which we have been nourished, freedom from want. And the final one at the end of the service, before we pray L'Shana Haba B'Yerushalayim, our prayer for freedom from fear, freedom to hope and strive for a better future for the Jewish people, for our nations, for all humankind. These are the 4 freedoms we remember at Pesach. A few comments on each. Freedom of religion, which we take for granted in South Africa and in the United States. But the Pew annual surveys and the United States State Department annual reports on religious freedom remind us vividly that 80% of the world's populations, including in populous nations like China and Russia, India and Pakistan, Nigeria, suffer from severe legal restrictions and repression or perilous dangers from non-state actors. We see Buddhist and Uyghur victims of genocidal activities in China, ethnic cleansing in Myanmar, clashes between Muslims and Hindus in India, Boko Haram's vicious attacks on churches and repeated kidnapping of young girls in Christian schools in Nigeria. Well, we Jews have been the quintessential victims of religious persecution over the centuries, oppressed, persecuted, attacked, repeatedly the victims of ethnic cleansing, 6 million lost to genocide, all because we were Jews. How painful then to see even in Western Europe and the United States a steady increase in hate crimes, in anti-Muslim acts and rhetoric, and in anti-Semitic discourse and acts of desecration and violence against Jewish individuals, synagogues, institutions, and communities in a manner we thought we would never see again after World War II. So we who know all too well the devastation caused by good people standing idly by the blood of their neighbor know exactly that why we cannot be silent when others' religious freedom is denied. The Maggid lifts up the importance of freedom of speech at a time when we have seen democracies weaken across the globe, an alarming rise of autocratic regimes, the crackdown on demonstrators from Hong Kong to Myanmar to Venezuela, the stifling of a free press in increasing numbers of countries, the blessing and cup of wine after the meal, freedom from want, global poverty rates, which thankfully for 60 years have been coming down across the globe, still leave, according to the World Bank, a quarter of the world, nearly 2 billion, living on $3.20 a day or less, with countries of color and communities of color disproportionately suffering from poverty, from climate change, from the COVID-19 epidemic. And the final cup, freedom from fear. Well, whether this will prove to be the cup of hope for the better world of which we dream is up to us. I was honored to host the Dalai Lama at his first Seder experience, at the end of which he observed, "Here, in this annual retelling of your story filled with hope for freedom, I begin to understand the secret of how the Jewish people survived centuries of enforced diaspora life. If our story for freedom after centuries of slavery teaches the world anything, it is that we, all humanity, are not the prisoners of a bitter and unremitting past. Rather, we can be, we must be, we will be the shapers of a better and more hopeful future of freedom, justice, and peace. In that spirit, then, allow me to wish you all that this Pesach be a true Chag Kosher v'Sameach that marks a renewal of health and safety and freedom for you, your loved ones, and all God's children everywhere.
Good evening, everybody. What an honor it is to be here at this Zoom Seder on the auspicious occasion of day 376 of lockdown in the year of our virus 2021/5. 5781. Now, Howie gave me the brief. He said, Nick, please, we want you to talk about the plagues, the 10 plagues. If you were to redesign the 10 plagues today, what would they be? And I thought about it, and I thought, what is wrong with the original plagues? Why do we need to redesign the plagues? And then I realized, obviously, there are some obvious issues with the old plagues. For example, blood. I mean, there hasn't really been a lot of blood. There's been blood clotting issues. There was that recent outbreak of Ebola-related bleeding in West Africa. And then, of course, more recently, last month, my oldest son, Ben, bled all over the kitchen after his brother tried to hit him with a monkey's tail. The tail actually missed, but he headbutted the edge of the table. And it was a toy, the monkey's tail. I mean, the tail was a toy, the monkey was real, which is confusing. But aside from that, no other blood. Other than actually last week when my friend Gerald Winkler borrowed my mask and snorkel and then bled all over it after cutting his finger on a barnacle whilst looking for an octopus teacher in the kelp just off Cape Point. But I really don't think there's been enough blood otherwise to constitute a plague. Then the frogs, not so much. Although we did find an enormous frog in our pool and it was not moving. And I said to my son Adam, what do you think's wrong with it? And he quoted Monty Python. He said, it's dead. That's what's wrong with it, which you wouldn't get if you're not a Monty Python fan. And then this very morning I went surfing at Muizenberg, which was infested with Frenchmen. And I know some of you think you know where I'm going with this, but you don't, because I actually decided to clear the water by shouting, Jacques! And which worked, apart from this one guy who looked across at me and said, excuse me, do I know you? Because his name was Jacques. And I said, no. And I had to explain to my wife that he was the only frog left in the water, because frogs are what Frenchmen are referred to, but she didn't know that. Maybe you didn't either, and now you know something you didn't before. Lice? No lice during lockdown. That's one thing the kids don't get from Zoom schooling, that and an education. Flies? There was that one time during level 4 when we went to the Badenhorst farm in Malmesbury for the weekend, and the population of Swartland flies actually outnumbered the population of Swartland non-flies by about 16-1. And one of those non-flies was actually a pig called Choppy, and the other was a pig called Frida, I think it was. And nearly all of those flies were actually in our kitchen. And there was also that time we had an outbreak of maggots at home. But I'd prefer not to talk about that. What the hell is pestilence? I could have Googled it, but I didn't. Boils! That's one thing, actually. We have had a lot of boils. I read somewhere there's been a severe increase in Zoom-related buttock boils, aka Staphylococcus aureus. Basically, it's from sitting too long. And then obviously hail. You guys have had a lot of hail in Joburg, but I think plague is a bit of an extreme word for that, even when the hail is the size of golf balls. I think we should start referring to hardy-dars and mosquitoes rather than locusts, and maybe then that would be a plague. I'm not sure that stage 2 of load shedding constitutes the plague of darkness, but Eskom, you're a strong contender. Obviously, guys, we need to update them. So yes, you're right. There are so many massive, huge modern plagues that need to be eradicated. If you think about war, illness, disease, famine, hatred, bigotry, prejudice, sexism and violence against women, poverty, inequality, hopelessness, anxiety, and depression, WhatsApp groups, the destruction of our natural resources. These are all massive plagues. But then there are also those lesser known but equally destructive plagues. For example, the terms Zoom Seder, Zoom birthday, Zoom funeral, Zoom schooling. Any event with the word Zoom in front of it is part of that plague. I think there's the plague of people who say, it is what it is. And yeah, thank God we managed to pivot. Kale is definitely a plague. It's everywhere. All I'm saying is it's not easy to choose the top 10. Howie, that's what I'm trying to say. So I think at the end of the day, let's focus, at the end of the Chag, let's focus on the relevance of this beautiful festival that we've been celebrating for thousands of years. Passover is still here to remind us, everybody, about the freedoms that we do have, and hopefully make us more make us more conscious of the freedoms that others don't have. Like, for example, when after Pesach you go to your favorite pizza restaurant and Italy just went back into lockdown. Think about that. Or when you go to your favorite pizza restaurant and you discover it's no longer a pizza restaurant, it's now a barber. So the Passover teaches us, I think, to hold faith. Like our ancestors, we can expect this difficult period to pass. Like kidney stones. So, good yontif everybody, Chag Sameach. And in the words of the late great Rabbi of Paul, Rav Andris Jacobus Christoffel Rabinovich, hoekom is die nacht anders as al die ander nagte? Why is this night different from all the other nights? Want vanaand is alles koud, maar môre gaat het alright wees. Asseblief Here, dankie Here. Thank God, please God, Baruch Hashem, Amen. Toot, 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 toot. Goodbye everybody, I love you. Chag Sameach. Yontif.
Go. Thank you to all our Jewish customers for your support. On behalf of Sorbet, I'd like to wish you all a Freiliche Pesach. May it be filled with peace, prosperity, good health, and happiness. I wish you all the joys for the Passover holiday. Thank you.
Good evening to all our viewers, and thank you to the Jewish Report for inviting me to join this panel on tonight's webinar that's focusing on the Seder night. Rabban Gamliel says that whoever doesn't make mention of these three items on the Seder night has not fulfilled their obligation. What are those three items? Pesach, Matzah, and Maror. And then the Haggadah goes on to describe each one of those three and what is the particular intent or thought process we're supposed to have when making mention of them on the Seder night. I wanted to delve into each one of the three, but to apply it to our lives today in the 21st century and see what lessons and messages we can walk away with. So let's start with Pesach. What's Pesach? What does it mean? It's obviously the Paschal Lamb, but it was named Pesach because Pesach means to jump over. God jumped over the homes of the Jewish people in Egypt when he killed the firstborn of the Egyptians. We all ran into our homes, protecting ourselves, keeping safe. And there we were instructed to take the blood of the Paschal Lamb, of the Pesach, and to smear the blood along our doorposts. That way God will know which homes are of the Jewish people, and he will protect them and jump over them. But let me ask you, does God need blood in order to indicate which are the Jewish homes? Surely he knows on his own which homes belong to the Jewish community, the Jewish people. Well, my friends, the blood was in fact there, not for God. The blood was there for ourselves. It was a reminder of who we are and what we stand for. It was a reminder of our commitment to God and to Torah. It was a reminder that we are different to the Egyptians, and therefore we are staying home tonight, and God is looking after us. So let's keep that in mind as we talk about the Pesach, and that is commitment to God and commitment to the Jewish way of life. The second item is the Matzah, and the Haggadah says that the Matzah reminds us of the bread that we ate as we left Egypt and became a free nation. That's interesting because at the beginning of the Haggadah, we spoke about Matzah being lechem oni, the bread of affliction, that we ate as slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt. So let me ask you, which is it? Is Matzah the bread of the slaves in Egypt? Or is Matzah the bread of the free nation that left Egypt? And the answer is there's a common denominator here. The Seder night is reminding us that when we became a free nation out of Egypt, we didn't just become free on our own to do as we wish. That would be dangerous. To have a nation that can do as they wish would be dangerous for society. We became a free nation to be able to practice our religion, to be able to connect ourselves to God, to be able to adhere to the responsibilities of the Torah. And that's why we eat matzah, because we ate matzah as slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt, and we also ate matzah as we became slaves, committed to God and to Torah as we headed towards Mount Sinai to receive the 10 Commandments. So the second item of Matzah reminds us of responsibility. We have a responsibility to follow the guidelines of God and the Torah. And the third item is the maror. And the Haggadah says that maror, the bitter herbs, reminds us of the hard labor and the hard work. And one of the words we focused on in the Haggadah is the chomer. Chomer means the mortar that we worked with. But chomer also means chumriyot, which means the physicality, the material. Because the physicality and the material makes us bitter. We think to ourselves that more money will make us happier. More possessions and physical belongings will make us happier. The Haggadah is reminding us that chomer, material, actually makes us bitter. Because we're never content, we're never happy, we're never satisfied. The way to actually be happy and joyous is to put the physicality on the side in some degree and focus on spirituality, purpose and meaning and Torah insights, mitzvot and good deeds and kindness. And when we focus on that, when we focus on helping others and helping the world around us, that gives us a sense of joy and simcha. So maror reminds us not to focus on the physical, because that won't give us the joy, but rather focus on the spiritual that will uplift us and inspire us and give us a very meaningful life. Hopefully we can focus more on these three items. And I'd like to take this opportunity to wish all our viewers, both here in South Africa and abroad, all around the globe, a Chag Kasher v'Sameach, a happy and a kosher Pesach. And please God, we should be able to experience true freedom and the ability to connect ourselves to God, to Judaism, and to Torah. Thank you.
Hi everyone, this is Bradley Moritz from the Sport and Recreation Division of Long for Life, wishing all of our customers and patrons a Chag Kasher v'Sameach, and thank you all for your loyal support of Sportsman's Warehouse, Outdoor Warehouse, Shelf Life, First Ascent, Cape Storm, OTG, Speedo, and all of the other brands in the Long for Life Sport and Recreation Division. Chag Sameach, and thank you all.
Hello everybody, this is Avron and Joshua Alter from the Greater Sandton area, South Africa, representing the BHH Sandton Shul. We wish you all the people around the world, Chag Sameach for these upcoming Pesach holiday.
We'll be singing Ya'alev Yavo, which is done on all of very special and important Chagim. It's about rising our prayers to Shemayim, to Hashem, and asking Him that He will answer our prayers.
Ya'alev Yavo V'yagiya V'yeraveh V'yeratzer V'yishama V'yipakeh
V'yizacher Zichroneinu V'gdoneinu V'zichron Avoteinu
V'zichron Mashiach ben David V'zichron Yerushalayim Nir Kodshecha V'zichron Kol Amcha Beit Yisrael Lefanecha Lifneita Letova
V'zichron Mashiach ben David Avdecha V'zichron Yerushalayim Yikodshecha V'zichron Kol Amcha B'Yisrael Lefanecha Lifleita Letova Ya'alev V'yavo V'yagiya V'yeraveh V'yeratzeh V'yishama V'yipakeh V'yizacher Zichroneinu V'gdoneinu V'zichron Avoteinu V'zichron Mashiach ben David
of the highlights of the Pesach Seder for me was always the cup of Elijah. Koisoi shel Eliyahu Hanovi. And also going out to open the door for Elijah. And we would go with lit candles. And we were told to make a special prayer there at the open door because it's a most opportune moment for our meaningful prayers to be answered. Why are we inviting Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah the prophet, to our Seder? Traditionally, he comes to every Jewish Seder. Well, he's an angelic figure, so he can somehow manage that miracle. As he comes to every bris. At a circumcision ceremony, we have the Kisei Shel Eliyahu, the chair of Elijah the prophet. And at the Seder, we have Koisei Shel Eliyahu Hanavi, the cup of Elijah the prophet. And the two are very much connected. Because Eliyahu once complained that the Jews were not keeping the covenant with God as well as they should have. And Hashem said, mark my word, you will attend every bris and you will testify that indeed my people are keeping the covenant. And so traditionally, Eliyahu Hanavi goes to every bris to testify that it is so. Now there is a connection between bris and Pesach, because back in Egypt, there was a mass circumcision, because it says in the Torah that you may not partake of the Paschal lamb, the first Seder in history back in Egypt, if you were not circumcised. So all those who had not been circumcised made sure to have a bris before the Korban Pesach, before the Paschal lamb would be eaten. Lamb on a spit, it was, by the way, the very first Seder in history. So Eliyahu comes to every Seder to testify that yes, we are entitled to participate in this Pesach experience because he knows that we are indeed circumcised. We've had the bris. We are indeed keeping the covenant with Hashem. So, as kids, we always look to see, I'm sure you did too, is the wine moving from the cup of Elijah? Did the prophet drink, take a few sips? And we argued, yes, no, maybe so. The fifth cup is interesting. The Talmud records a difference of opinion whether we should in fact have 4 cups or 5 cups, because there are different expressions of redemption in the Bible. And the 4 we know, and so we have 4 cups for sure, but there was a question about a 5th, the Heveti, I will bring you, not only take you out of Egypt, I will bring you to my promised land. And the compromise in the Talmud was we will drink 4 cups, but we will pour a 5th cup. And that 5th cup is called the cup of Elijah, because Elijah, as we read yesterday in the Haftarah, special Haftarah, Erev Pesach, is that he will be the harbinger of redemption. Eliyahu Hanavi will come to the world just prior to the arrival of Mashiach, the Messiah, and he will announce his imminent arrival, and he will do all kinds of things and solve all kinds of doubts and dilemmas for us. But he will be, as the prophet Malachi says, behold, I send you this day Elijah the prophet before that great and awesome day. So he is the harbinger of redemption. He is the one who tells us that Mashiach is just about to come. And that's why towards the end of the Seder we have the second part of Hallel. The first part of Hallel, back at the beginning, recalls B'tzeit Yisrael Mitzrayim, when we left Egypt. The second part refers more to the final redemption with the Messianic age, which we look forward to with such anticipation now at this time in history. And so Eliyahu Hanavi, who is the harbinger of redemption, is associated with that 5th cup. The 5th cup, which too speaks of the Heveti, I will bring you into the promised land. And so we pray that, as we will say at the end of Haggadah L'Shana Haba B'Yerushalayim, next year in Jerusalem does not mean that we have to wait a whole year for Mashiach and for the exiles to be ingathered to Jerusalem. We believe that Mashiach can come now, so that next year we will already be in Jerusalem. Please please God, may it be a meaningful Pesach with beautiful Seders, and may the prayers that we have associated with Elijah the prophet be fulfilled. May we all be redeemed very quickly. And I wish you all Chag Kasher v'Sameach, a beautiful, joyous, and kosher Pesach, together with your families, together with your friends, safely, healthily, and please God, may we see the imminent arrival of Mashiach now. Amen.
On behalf of Kitchen Needs Mixers, I would like to thank you all for your wonderful support. I would like to wish all our Jewish customers a happy and kosher Passover. May you be blessed with happiness, prosperity, peace, and good health. And always have a happy Passover. May it be filled with happiness, togetherness, and smiles.
So we're joined now by the chair of SORGES, the South African Union of Jewish Students, the WITS chair, Benjamin Atti, as well as Natanya Porter, who is WITS education campus officer as well. Natanya, is education a human right?
I fully believe that education is a human right. I think as an education student studying to be a teacher, I think that education should be accessible to all people, not just those who can afford it, not just those born in the upper class, not just as a privilege. I think that education shouldn't be a privilege. It shouldn't be given to those who can afford it. It should be given to everyone. Every person should be able to be educated. And that I feel so strongly about this fight. And I really hope that we can come to like a conclusion where all students do have the education that they deserve.
So Ben, we see lots of protests taking place in Braamfontein and in fact around the country. Can you explain the issue to us? What's actually at play?
Absolutely. What started really as a result of the pandemic was that many students lost income that they would have funded for them. So private companies had to shut down, and obviously they withdrew funding. Many private companies just said, we just can't afford to provide scholarships or bursaries anymore. And a government sector of NASFAT, who usually provides student loans to students who are at university, kind of defaulted on a lot of these loans and said, listen, we just can't afford it anymore. And as a result, 8,142 students at Wits University weren't allowed to register, which was a crazy amount, about a fifth of the university. It's also especially crazy because these aren't students who have failed or who are repeating. These are students who are bright and have academically passed despite everything that happened last year, and were told, listen, you're not allowed to return to university through no fault of your own. And the SRC, as well as the general student body, said that this is unacceptable and took originally to Wits and now it's extended to the streets of Braam and across the country, like you said, to say education is a right and we need to protest and fight for that right.
So tell us, at the moment, are you making progress? Natanya, have we seen some progress taking place?
So we have a little bit, definitely not enough at all. We're raising money. We're trying to raise 21 million Rand. And the government did give 10 million, which we're grateful for. And it's definitely a step in the right direction, but it's definitely not enough. And we just heard today that 1,500 students are allowed to register now. Again, when we have 8,142 students, 1,500 is definitely not enough students being allowed to register. But we're going to keep going and we're going to do whatever we can to get the 8,142 students registered.
So Ben, are we seeing Jewish students participating in this fight?
So we have a couple of Jewish students who have really taken the cause to heart, but I'd say not enough. The truth is that there should be an issue that as Jews we should care deeply about, from an injustice standpoint, from an educational standpoint, from a community standpoint, from a country standpoint. And while there have been some Jews on the ground, and there are some Jews who are doing amazing work, providing behind the scenes work, legal help, psychological or counseling, as well as Jews who are actually involved in the protest, it would be fantastic to see more Jews kind of getting behind this cause as opposed to sitting very comfortably in our little bubble and not really involving ourselves in the protest.
So we've seen, obviously, Gabby Farber, who's on the WITS SRC, playing a very active role. I believe both of you last Friday were taking challahs to people in prison who had been arrested as part of the protests.
Not challahs, but we did take food to them. But maybe we should do challahs, Ben. That sounds like a good
Matzah for next week.
Matzah for Pesach, for those people being arrested, because that truly is the bread of our affliction. Guys, thank you for everything that you're doing for your fellow students. Thank you for everything that you're doing for the country. And thank you for joining us on our pre-Pesach show and on this Human Rights Day as well. Cheers, guys.
Thank you for having us, Howard.
מי כמוך באלים, אדוני, מי כמוך באלים, מי כמוך נדר בקודש, מי כמוך נדר, נורא תהילות אוסף
So Benji, as the evening comes to an end, we need to thank Danny Kadol for the amazing work that he did in helping us putting all of this together. We need to thank the entire board of the Jewish Report, people like Dina Diamond and Herschel Davids and Sean Mattison, who've devoted so much time and energy to making sure not only that the Jewish Report newspaper gets out, that we can serve our community, but at the same time that we can put all of these remarkable webinars together. It's been such a privilege for the board of the South African Jewish Report to be able to do that. But today is an important day. Today is Human Rights Day in South Africa. And I think we've seen over the course of this webinar that human rights are underpinned entirely by the story of our exodus from Egypt, our emancipation from slavery, our achievement of freedom. And we've been discussing freedom in some of our webinars since we began this quite a while ago.
You know how we say, part of the learning, which we've heard so much about, is that we actually have to picture ourselves that we were in Egypt and we were slaves. We were once slaves and we were forgotten. And it reminds me, in that amazing Mandela Day webinar, where we had the incredible LB Sachs, he said, the moral question of our generation is going to be the distribution of the vaccines. Now, this was nowhere near vaccine rollouts. It was nowhere near where we understood it to the extent that we do. And I wonder today, if we have to answer that question, whether we've learned the lessons and whether we've internalized those lessons, what actually human rights are. And it's one of those questions we'll leave everyone to answer themselves, because it's not for us to determine that. And that's part of our journey as a people to freedom. And it's part of the journey of the country, that we have to demand these human rights for people. And I found that one of the most remarkable experiences, really, to watch that. We saw Rory Stein that day, who was also exceptional. But I just thought LB Sachs just hit the nail on the head on how this human rights is a constant battle. It's a constant moving battle, that there are new questions all the time that we have to be prepared to answer.
Well, I think, Benji, the amazing thing is when we see Jewish students at the forefront of the demonstrations taking place on university campuses around the country to provide an access to decent education at an affordable price to all South Africans. When I see Jewish students once again at the forefront of that battle, I must tell you, I think they've learned the lesson of our history. I think they are the people who today make us truly proud. Because if we are going to progress as a nation in South Africa, it's going to be because we're going to educate enough people. And the mere fact that your parents or your grandparents cannot afford to send you to university should not deprive South Africa of your skills, of your talent, and of the future that you so deserve as a people. So to all of those who've watched us this evening, a huge thank you to all of you for joining us this evening. We are so proud to be able, on behalf of the South African Jewish Report, to bring you these remarkable webinars. As we said, this is the 84th webinar. And we end with one closing once again. If you are able to support us and continue to provide you the service in the newspaper with our remarkable editor, Petros Maunda, with our entire team of journalists around South Africa, in Durban, in Cape Town, in Johannesburg, if you are able to support us in making sure we continue as a strong, vibrant, remarkable community, we ask you to please give generously to make sure we can continue. Thank you for joining us this evening. Good night to all of you. Chag Pesach Kasher v'Sameach. Chag Sameach, Benji.
Chag Sameach, Howie. Chag Sameach, Danny.
Danny, turn on your camera, wave at everyone, and thank you. And thank
all
you.
our wonderful viewers and our beautiful community, wherever you are across the world, just Chag Sameach, and may you all be blessed with a wonderful special Pesach. And please, God, next year you can have even more people at your Seder, and we can be reunited, and may Mashiach come, and Chag Sameach, everyone.
B'Shana Haba b'Yerushalayim.
Amen.
If you are still watching, and if you haven't left us a comment, please put a comment for us in the comment section of Zoom, of YouTube, or Facebook. So please just leave us a comment. Chag Sameach to you all.